The mouse of the day is Gassy Gilbert. Don't forget to smash like, guys, and subscribe. And also, if you want to get some of your own mouse of the day trading cards just like this, go to awesomecheesemouse.com or go to the first link in the description. The thing that made Gilbert infamous was his unique and rather unfortunate talent. Unlike other mice whose farts were embarrassing for them and a forgettable incident, Gilbert's gas was, well, magical. Every time he let one rip, there was a cloud of sparkling green dust that would float up beneath him, and it would be twinkling like the stars. Now, nobody knew exactly why this happened. Some say that Gilbert was born with it, while others whispered that it was a curse, placed on him after he insulted a cheese vendor one time at the village market. But Gilbert himself had no clue. All he knew was that one day, after eating a particularly ripe piece of Gouda, he let out a tiny little squeak, and poof, a dazzling green cloud filled the air around him. At first, Gilbert was horrified. Farting was embarrassing enough, but a sparkly green cloud? It was a nightmare. At this point, he did what any other mice would do. He ran. But the cloud followed him. No matter how fast he scurried or how many tunnels he darted into, that glittery mist stuck behind him, and it was just floating in the air, lazily, as if it had no care in the world. For the first few days, Gilbert did his best to avoid other mice. He didn't want anyone to see his sparkly problem. He hid in his burrow, eating as little cheese as possible and hoping that whatever magic was causing the clouds would eventually wear off. But as anyone who knows mice will tell you, avoiding cheese is a particularly impossible problem. One evening, after a long day of avoiding his annoying neighbors, Gilbert gave in to temptation and devoured an entire wheel of cheddar cheese. The results were spectacular. A series of small but powerful squeaks escaped from Gilbert, and before he could even blink, the air around him was filled with shimmering green clouds. They glittered in the light, casting a soft glow across his burrow. Gilbert stared in disbelief. This wasn't just a one-time thing. This was magical, and it wasn't going anywhere. The next day, Gilbert cautiously ventured outside. He was hoping to avoid any more incidents, but of course fate had other plans. As he wandered through the village trying to act normal, a small bubble of gas formed in his belly. He tried to hold it in, he really did, but it was no use. With a soft pop, a bright green cloud popped out right behind him. The village mice stopped in their tracks. "What was that?" one of them asked, staring in awe as the cloud floated by. "It's beautiful," said another mouse, eyes wide with amazement. Gilbert was blushing furiously, and he tried to scurry away, but the cloud followed him like an unwanted companion. Wherever he went, that glittery green mist floated behind him, leaving a trail of sparkles in his wake. Before long, the entire village knew about Gilbert's magical farts, and his reputation as Gassy Gilbert was cemented. The children in the village loved it. They'd follow Gilbert around, giggling and pointing at the clouds, trying to catch little twinkles before they disappeared. To them, it was a game, a magical spectacle that brightened their day. But to Gilbert, it was a never-ending source of embarrassment. He didn't want to be known as the mouse whose farts sparkled. He just wanted to live a normal life. But no matter what he tried, Gilbert couldn't control it. He switched to a diet of nothing but greens, hoping it would lessen the magical clouds. It didn't. He tried holding his breath, but that only made the clouds become worse when they eventually escaped. Even avoiding cheese altogether, which was no small feat for a mouse, didn't even seem to help. One day, after an especially large cloud escaped during the village's annual cheese tasting festival, Gilbert decided he had had enough. He was going to find a way to control his magical farts, no matter what it took. His first idea was to consult Floral Fiona, the mouse known for her expertise in plants and flowers. Surely Fiona would know some sort of herb or leaf that could neutralize the magical gas. So with a determined squeak, Gilbert scurried over to Fiona's garden, where she was tending to her lavender and lilies. "Fiona," Gilbert said, stuffing his paws together awkwardly, I need your help. I've got a problem." Fiona looked up, her eyes soft and kind. "Oh, Gilbert, of course. What seems to be the problem?" Gilbert sighed. It's my farts. They're magical and green and sparkly." Fiona blinked, her whiskers switching. "Magical farts," she repeated, tilting her head. That's unusual, but I think I have something that could help you, actually." She led Gilbert over to a section of her garden where strange glowing plants grew. "This is the stardust sage," Fiona explained, plucking a small leaf and holding it up for Gilbert to see. "It's said to have calming properties, and it might help balance out the magic in your, condition." Gilbert's eyes lit up with hope. "You think it'll work?" Fiona smiled. "It's worth a try. Just eat a few leaves every day and see what happens." For the next week, Gilbert followed Fiona's advice very religiously. Every morning, he'd nibble on a few leaves of stardust sage, hoping that it would finally put an end to his sparkly green clouds. At first, it seemed to work. His farts were less frequent and the clouds were smaller, but by the end of the week, the magic came back in full force. If anything, the sage had made his farts brighter and more sparkly. "I'm doomed," Gilbert muttered to himself as another cloud floated lazily behind him. "I'll be Gassy Gilbert forever." But when he was just about to give up hope, Gilbert remembered something. There was one mouse in the village who might be able to help him, spellcasting Cindy. If anyone could fix his magical problem, it would be her. With renewed determination, Gilbert set off into the forest where Cindy lived in her moss-covered house. He had never ventured that far before, but he knew that he had no other choice. If Cindy couldn't help him, then no mouse could. As he walked, the trees grew taller, the air cooler, and the path more winding. Every now and then a small green cloud would escape, trailing behind him like a strange glittery beacon, but Gilbert didn't care. He was on a mission, and he wouldn't stop until he found exactly what he needed: Cindy. Gilbert trudged deeper into the forest. His little heart was racing with both excitement and nervousness. The forest seemed more magical the further and further he went. The trees were taller, the leaves glowed faintly, and the air had a strange, calming hum. The sun had begun to set, casting long shadows between the towering trunks, but Gilbert pressed on, determined to find spellcasting Cindy before nightfall. Every now and then, a sparkly green cloud would escape from behind him, floating up lazily into the air, twinkling like stars. He grimaced, hoping he wouldn't have to explain himself too many times once he reached spellcasting Cindy's house. He was already embarrassed enough. Finally, after what felt like hours and hours of walking, Gilbert saw a faint light through the trees. It glowed softly, nestled in a small clearing, and as he got closer, he realized it was Cindy's house, just like the stories had described it. The house was small, covered in moss, almost blending into the forest itself. Mushrooms and glowing flowers grew around the base, and a soft magical glow enchanted the entire building. Gilbert took a deep breath and knocked on the door. His heart was pounding in his chest. For a moment there was silence, then with a creak the door opened, and Cindy appeared, with her star-tipped wand in one paw and a curious expression on her face. "Gilbert?" she asked, tilting her head. "What brings you all the way out here?" Gilbert shifted nervously. "I need your help," he told Cindy. "It's, well, for my farts," he admitted, his face turning bright red beneath his fur. Cindy raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Your farts?" she asked, stepping aside to let Gilbert in. "Come inside, tell me everything." Gilbert shuffled into the cozy little house, taking in the shelves lined with spell books and jars of mysterious ingredients. He'd never been inside such a magical house before, and the air felt thick with enchantment. Cindy gestured for him to come sit down on her couch, and unfortunately he let another green cloud escape. It sparkled briefly in the air before fading away. Cindy watched the cloud with a curious glint in her eye. "Interesting," she murmured, sitting across from him. "Magical farts, you say? How long has this been happening?" "Ever since I ate that weird slice of Gouda at the market a few weeks ago," Gilbert explained, his paws fidgeting nervously. "At first, it was just a small cloud, but now, well, I can't control it. They happen all the time, and they're sparkly. I've tried everything, changing my diet, eating herbs from Floral Fiona's garden, but nothing's worked." Cindy nodded thoughtfully. "It sounds like you've been affected by a rare type of magic. Cheese can be tricky, you know, especially aged cheeses. Sometimes they can absorb magical energy over time, and if a mouse eats a particularly enchanted piece, well, things like this can happen." Gilbert's eyes widened. "So it's the cheese? I'm cursed because of a piece of cheese?" "Not cursed," Cindy corrected, waving her wand slightly in the air, "just affected. The magic in that cheese is somehow mixed with your body's natural functions, and it's producing these sparkly clouds." "Fascinating, really." "Fascinating for you, maybe," Gilbert muttered, crossing his arms. "But it's embarrassing. I can't go anywhere without leaving a trail of sparkles behind me." Cindy smiled sympathetically. "I can see how that would be frustrating, but don't worry. I think I can help you." With a flick of her wand, Cindy summoned a large spell book from one of the shelves. It floated down right in front of her and landed gently in her lap. She shuffled through the pages, scanning for ancient spells and incantations. Gilbert watched in silence, hoping for her to find something useful. And after a few moments, Cindy's eyes lit up. "Aha! There it is, the dispersal charm. It's to neutralize lingering magical spells. It won't remove the magic entirely, but it should give you some more control over when the clouds appear." Gilbert's ears perked up. "Really? You can do that for me?" Cindy nodded, standing up and waving her wand in a slow, deliberate motion. "Yes, but it will take some time to take full effect. You'll need to perform the charm every morning for a week, and then the clouds should become much less frequent. Eventually, they might only appear when you choose to, but this could be, well, kind of fun, actually." Gilbert smiled nervously. "Fun? I don't know if that's the word I would use." Cindy chuckled. "Oh, come on. Imagine if you could control when the sparkles appeared, at parties, at festivals, or just for fun. You'd be the talk of the village." Gilbert thought about it for a moment. Maybe Cindy was right. Maybe this whole sparkly fart thing didn't have to be so bad after all. If he could control it, maybe he could even enjoy it. After all the people of the Mouse Village loved chasing his glittery clouds, and it wasn't like they were dangerous, just unexpected and a little bit weird. "All right," Gilbert said, nodding. "I'll give it a try." Cindy smiled and began the incantation, with her wand glowing as she performed the spell. The air around them shimmered with magic, and Gilbert felt a warm, tingling sensation in his belly. It was as if the magic was swirling around inside him, calming down, settling into place. "There," Cindy said, lowering her wand. "The spell is in place. Remember to perform the charm every morning for a week, and you should start to see some noticeable results. The clouds will become much more manageable." Gilbert sighed. "I don't know what I would have done without you, Cindy." Cindy waved her paw dismissively. "It's no trouble at all. Just remember, magic can be unpredictable, especially when it comes to cheese. If you ever have any more magical incidents, you know where to find me." With that, Gilbert thanked Cindy one last time and set off back towards the Mouse Village, feeling lighter than he had ever felt in weeks. As he walked, he noticed there were no sparkly clouds following him. For the first time in what felt like forever, he wasn't leaving a trail of glitter behind. But just as he was about to reach the edge of the forest, he felt a familiar rumble in his belly. Gilbert froze, bracing himself for the inevitable puff of green, but instead of an uncontrollable cloud, he felt nothing. The rumble passed, and a small, perfectly shaped green cloud appeared, sparkling for just a moment before gently fading away. Gilbert smiled. Cindy's spell had worked. He could control it now, and it would float away when it was time. As he entered the village, Gilbert held his head high, just a little bit higher than usual. Sure, he was still Gassy Gilbert, but now he had something special, something magical. And who knew, maybe having some sparkly green farts wasn't such a bad thing after all. Do you guys mess with Gassy Gilbert?